Water in my bat cup, because bat cup. Hey everyone, welcome to Apple Tuesdays. Yeah, that's my picture, if you've been on Twitch way back when. And for this week, we're actually going to repeat last week's because number one. I've deleted last week's because number two. Even though I tested everything and even recorded to the hard drive and everything and then reviewed it and it all worked fine, none of the audio that I was putting out actually went through. So yeah, it was the audio night and you heard nothing. So everything is working now, I swear. If it's not, you can let me know. I'm not watching Facebook or YouTube, pretty much just Twitch at this point for chat, for many reasons. So what we're going to do is go ahead and reboot the Mockingboard program. I have this board that I bought off a Facebook group, and it's one of these redone Mockingboard clones. It also has two slots for the voice chips, which are about the cost of about a small 2-bedroom apartment in New York. So I don't know how soon I'm going to be able to afford those, but I'd love to get them. So let's just get to it using the real Apple over here. And all my images are on the floppy emu. Again, this is what one of my original Apples look like, that you can see years and years and years ago. And yeah. So we'll let the Mockingboard do its little intro. It takes forever. It's really loud. I'm gonna turn it down for now because we get it. Yeah, you can't stop it. This is it. You can hit the space bar and it's like, no. You're watching my entire beautiful opening, and I'm gonna go really slow as I scroll up. It's because, what was this, the early 80s maybe this came out by then? So every little important animation was important as an animation. There is a slight, no, there we go. I was about to say, the program that was running in the beginning I wrote, and I set the speed to 200, so everything was delayed a little bit. And sometimes when you do that and somebody writes a program, one of the first things you do when you write, at least in AppleSoft, like I used to, is you home, we all clear the screen, but speed equals 255, because you're going to get some asshole who's going to go ahead and do a speed, whatever, 0 or 1, like your little brother comes into the room and completely destroys your time. Because once it starts printing, I mean, you have to hit reset. Anyways, if you run a program and you don't take care of that business, everything is going to just be so slow. So anyways, so let's go ahead and run through, let's run through some music first, just so you can hear what this card can do. And for some of you, it's not really that new, but for a lot of, that's what I say, some of the old timers who used to have these beasts. And let's see, yes, very intuitive interface here. Return to run, space to select, and arrows do nothing. So when they say space to select, you literally hit the space bar to make your selections. It's really bizarre. So we'll go ahead and we'll set up some music here. And I know that since Christmas is around the corner, and I know that also means Halloween is just being extended till Christmas, let's do Sugar Plum Fairy, because we should all know that one. And what you're about to hear, driven on the Mockingboard, if you burned it to vinyl back in the day, you would pay $12 to $18 for it as part of a record, because that's pretty much what electronic albums went for, and they were voodoo back then. People were just like, wow, this is so amazing. This one, not as good as some of the synth albums that are out there, but it's still Sugar Plum Fairy. So obviously I need to bring our volume back up here, and let's go ahead and listen to this amazing piece of computer-generated wizardry. left and right. You don't get any panning on these things. There was no stereo. It was channel 1 and channel 2. What you did with it was up to you. So, you get the idea here, right? So they have a keyboard where you can just turn your keyboard. Oh, sorry, I have to hit the space bar. You turn the keyboard, and there you go. You get one row of keys, and they do nothing. The caps lock is on. Oh, no, they are doing it. And that means I've hit the wrong key, so it's just going to do that obnoxious beep. Yay. Exciting stuff. I mean, we as kids were riveted, would not go to bed for, 72 hours listening and playing with this stuff. But now let's go ahead and go back to the main menu. And what I'm going to do now is go back to the sound utility by hitting the space bar. Yes, right? And we're going to call up some of the demo sounds. What we learned last week, which you didn't hear, was that some of the choices here that you are given are, I guess there's a manual or something that came with this that explains what, for instance, enable goes to 63. Well, 63, each one of these values represents a particular layout of your voicing and your volume and your filters, and creates the ability to sustain a note, maybe make something palatable as a pad, or it turns it into a noise variance. So you can get those old school effects like the snare drum and the Atari kind of space vibe, which we'll go ahead and call up on some of these. We have the C key here, which swaps speakers. So you'll see speaker 1, and if I hit C, it goes speaker 2. So that just means literally out of the back of this thing, the left and right are the channel 1, channel 2, speaker 1, speaker 2. And then B plays them simultaneously. So let's first, I know kids, we didn't have Windows back then where you could just click. You actually had to hit catalog and then memorize what you saw. So for instance, let's listen to bump. What would bump sound like? So we're going to load bump. And it's just going to preload the values, and then we'll hit P to play. So there you go. Now, some of you may not know that my left ear can't hear very well out of it, so I have to switch my headphones. So there you go. I know, ironic, right? I can hear if I turn it up loud enough and change the balance, but... So there's your bump. Pretty simple. Now enable at 56. If we go down and change that, again, I'm not going to use the arrows. I learned this before. I believe it is... Maybe I can't... Oh, I can use the arrows on here. Why not on the main menu? So if I change that 56 to something else and then play it again, you can see it definitely changes the sound. So one of the things I wanted to do for this broadcast is I'm going to mute the mic and I'm going to go through, fire some of these off. Feel free to sample them, use them however you want, because if you ever wanted an authentic Apple II sound coming off of a Mockingboard to use in your production, here it is. So pretty cool. Obviously, if I start mucking around up there with the chorus tone, it's all set to 5, 5, and 8. That will obviously change the structure of the sound. More noticeable when we get into the pads, and one of them I believe is celestial. So let's try to load that if I remember how to spell it properly, because that's always a fun one. Nope, see, I completely... Oh, I forgot to add the word sound. Okay. It's funny how kids want keyboards that sound like this today for their PC. I would probably murder my child if they did that. So here is Celestial. Celestial. Pretty cool stuff. A little bit of detuning going on there. You can tell by the channel. It isn't really changing the coarse tone, but our fine tone just detuned enough. Not the smoothest filter going down you can hear. And if we jump off from 56 to 57, a little smoother. I know if we go lower, that's when we start getting the noise artifacts. Okay, so that kind of reminds me... Hey, Batwell. That kind of reminds me of your Atari. And maybe it died a little, like in the middle of something you were doing, like playing a game, and that one sound. Because it's got that typical Atari kind of noise. Or maybe the programmer got lazy and, you know, that's all you're getting. You're going to get a sine wave. So if we get back up into the 60s, it looks like after 53 or so, you start getting away from the sound, the noise sound, and the white noise. So let's go ahead and detune that even more. Yeah, I hit the ends and then I kind of blow it there. So 97, and let's give that an 89. That's going to be a pretty good harsh detune. It should be, but I think that 61 is messing it up. That may be forcing it to round. So let's go back to, I think it was 56. Yikes. And I don't believe if we enter the noise period here, it's not going to do anything until we drop down below 56. Yeah, it's not really there. But if we go down to like 35. It's funny how all the sounds coming out of this thing sound like Atari 2600 sounds. It's probably using the same chip, to be honest. So now obviously we can get into the envelope. We could start mucking with that. Really change. That's a long envelope. Ooh, and let's see the shape of the envelope. Can we become very annoying with this sound? Turn it up for your neighbors. out into cyberspace. All right, let's see what other wonderful sounds we can load, start playing with. You know, they're all going to sound the same. Although horses, I wonder what horses sound like. Let's load horses. Alrighty then, will it ever stop is the question. That depends on the amplitude here. I think 16 usually is a ramp, but variable. Let's see. That'll turn them off. So our horses have turned into faraway machine guns. Sorry, horses. So the 16 is our ramping. You can hear that. How it ramps up and down. I'm going to assume that's just our envelope shape. It's some repeating envelope. Maybe change that. And our envelope no longer repeats. So I'm kind of figuring this out on the fly. And learning not to hit that button because it's painful to hear. It's very painful. So we've got the coarse sound of the horse. But if we really spread it through the entire keyboard, I don't know what chord this is, a 4, 12, 15 on the keyboard. I'm sure it sounds horrible. And if we want to hear it, let's go back to our enable, and remember, I think it was 56. So we just got to bump, get rid of some of that noise. So I'm pretty sure it's that 15. 15's really low. Could be the 12 doing it. Or it could be our envelope, because we just don't know without a book. I don't know where the book is, guys. I'm sorry. Get rid of our noise. Nope. All right. A really big spread on that 6 to affect it that much. Or is it the 1? Or it may be the enable. So it says enable, and then you'll see really quick it says Control E. So as we go through every single one by hitting scroll, you can see we've got the noise registers for A, B, and C, and then the tone on or off. So obviously, as they go through them, it's just cycling through them on a combination of them all. So obviously 62, if we look that up, it'll probably explain. All right, Control E. So it's only using tone C. So that's why nothing changes. But although I thought it changed when we did A and B. So let's go back to 56. Yeah, 56 are 50. Enter number 0 to... Oh, do I have to actually hit Shift 3? 50, 55. Oh, there we go. So 56. Yeah, 56 are all on. The noise is all off. So that makes sense. And the what sounds like noise, I'm pretty sure is the 1. Nope. Shows you what I know. That's the fun part about doing this live. At least that way we can kind of fly, adjust it on the fly. Subwoofer breaking to someone else, because that actually, I'm gonna have to bring this into maybe SoundForge or something and take a look at what that did. I hope there's no DC offset. That does bring up a story. So I used to have a synth combination sampler synth called a PPG. It was used by Tangerine Dream, Kraftwerk, a bunch of other artists in the 70s and 80s, and late 70s. I want to say, I don't think they were, maybe, I'd have to look up when they actually started getting released for sale. Anyways, it weighed a ton. I don't know what possessed me to bring it out on the road with me in the first shows as Belief, but it was one of those synths samplers that was truly digital in nature. It had a tendency to create some sounds that were pretty drastic, and I'm pretty sure the recording studio or the rehearsal studio that we're out is way out of business, and whoever was running it was they're probably burnt the hell out by now. But we did our thing. I knew that this thing was pretty dangerous. I knew that if you play the PPG and you go run the gambit up the octaves, there were some sounds that just went just batshit crazy at the end. They just didn't follow any type of logical structure. They began digitally aliasing. It was beautiful. And the same goes for the other end of the spectrum. So we did our show. I don't know. I'm noodling around because I have this huge PA I can listen to a PPG on. And we show up next week, and the guy comes in, and he's like, "Hey, man, just want to let you know, do you have anything that throws a DC offset?" And I'm like, I don't got nothing. It's not me. We don't even know what that is. So he's like, "Well, your room that last week, I don't know, it like the speakers were blown out." So I got home, and I had a feeling I knew which sound it was. So I called up, God, what was it back then? It was the Atari. And I want to say I had, it's funny. I'm like trying to figure out, how did I figure this out? You have to look at the waveform. You kids, you can just take your phone and fart in it and it'll show you the waveform. That shit didn't exist when we were younger. So I believe it was an Atari that I sampled directly into, and I looked at the waveform of some of the sounds that I were doing, and they're all, you've got your You know, if this is your center line and, you know, your waves are all looking pretty and even the cool bass ones are like this. And then I'm looking at my shit and one of the bass lines is down here. Whoopsie. So, yeah, that is what happens apparently with some sounds on the PPG, that it had a heinous DC offset, blew the speakers out. Didn't know about it at the time, knew about it afterwards. And so I'm hoping these sounds aren't doing the same thing, because if you don't know what that does to your cone, when your cone is sitting there, this is your cone, right? This is where it normally sits. You know, it normally does this kind of thing, right? And when you turn on a keyboard and it's just sitting there, it should just stay like that. You play something and it moves. But when you have a DC offset, even if you turn it on, you don't hear anything. Wherever that offset is, your cone goes back or gets pushed forward to your new center line, which is what happened on that sound. It pulled the cone back in, and then it decided to go like this, where it completely shredded the coil and possibly the surround. So you learn something new every day. All right, let's go look for another sound, shall we? Because sounds. Pulsar. It's a little pulsar. What did I spell? Interesting. I think they spelled it wrong, or I spelled it wrong. Pulsar. Did I use an E? Oh, that's totally something different than a pulsar. This is a pulsar. I think this is still rated G. Well, it said dirty word, so now it's PG. That's a pretty sound. It's on speaker 2. And it's constant. So I'm going to switch to speaker 1 and play that. Speaker, play. There's a gong. Pretty cool. And I think speaking of gongs, and I'm not sure, but I want to say some of the games on my Total Replay do utilize the Mockingboard. I'm not sure if Karateka does, but it would be cool. And I think next week I'm going to be playing a lot of games. This was just a promise I made that I totally botched up, and I'm not botching up now, of going through some sounds here and giving some people some stuff to sample later on. So I think what I'm going to do is I am just going to kill the mic for a while and just make some sounds, and we'll just kind of make a sample fest and maybe make a song out of them later. So kick back, go get a sandwich, do something, but we're just gonna let you turn it up, and maybe the neighbors will call the cops. All right, I think we got quite a bit there. It was almost like a Merzbow concert in the Matrix that was only 3-bit, 2-bit, I guess. Like if everyone there just existed instead of a 24-bit world, it just went to shit in a 2-bit. But it was really 8-bit, so you wouldn't know that by some of it. You would. There was some pretty interesting oscillation going on there between the 3 channels. It was weird because if you were a 0, which should have been a pure sine wave, I believe they are sine waves, probably depending on maybe one of the other choices there, it went to shit. Channel A, when it was 0, it just, yeah, that was bizarre. But nevertheless, fun stuff. So that's it. That's this card. Yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing what some of these sounds look like, and I'll go ahead and maybe take the rest of the time here in creating the actual complete video, and maybe we'll look at some of these sounds and if we did encounter any oddness there. My wiring is pretty straightforward. The card plugs in to the computer, and I'm waiting for my clear case, which should be coming at the end of this month. So that'll be fun. I'll probably move the floppy and kind of have the camera more seated so we can see inside as well. But you can it takes the speaker from internally, it places it onto the card, and then the card has a 8-inch jack, and that comes straight out directly into a Behringer USB input. That was a problem last week. I had it going into my other mixer here. It was a monoprice mixer. It's just a little utility mixer. And I could hear it. It recorded to the computer, but it didn't send it out to the stream. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm claiming just gremlins. But now it works fine. So we shouldn't have any weird offset issues because of any signal path. But when you're dealing with some of this old 8-bit stuff, you never know what you're going to get. So I'll throw that on, and trying to get the ALF board maybe for this. I don't think this emulates the ALF, but then again, I've been really lazy because this is an Apple II Plus, no, 2E, so same thing, AppleSoft. Don't have the Integer card, too lazy to load it on Integer. I did, but I just haven't been able to get it to play yet, and I'm not sure the card supports it. It's one of these cards that supports, everything, but not everything. So I'll take a look at that. The ALF board is pretty cool, 16 voice. I believe it was 16. I have emulated the ALF in software, which I think I actually recorded years ago and put on my YouTube channel, because there's a song called Waterfall, which was amazing for back then. You're listening to records and Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze, and then you play Waterfall, and you're like, holy crap! It's like, did somebody put on a what's his face? Mind is drawing a blank, but there's what electronic, like Jean-Michel Jarre. It almost sounds like something like, when did this get slipped in here? And it's the Apple II. So pretty cool stuff. And if I can find it, I'll tack it on to the end of this video. So anyways, a couple of you stopped by. Thanks again for dropping by, and I'll let you go and explain to your neighbors that it wasn't you. All right. Have a good one. So I'm going to add this little addendum here. We're going to take a look at this one part, which you might have seen going off in the wave display on the left there. This particular sound of 3 registers, to me, immediately looks like it's a little above the center line. So I zoomed in a little bit more to take a closer look, and it has this tall fin and a smaller bottom fin, but it's actually, the conversion point is below the center line. So that looks like a potential classic DC offset. Some of those waves are converging too high and too low. It almost looks like it's oscillating above and below. It may just be the way that the wave is showing itself. But if you look really even closer, in the center of this fin, it looks kind of like it's too high. And then you'll see the waves converge below the center line. So there's some weirdness going on here with this. Little unusual in just that bottom convergence should be at 0 point, and it's not. So there you go. There is some wonky DC offset going off with this device. So no surprise there. Makes some cool sounds. Just don't blow up your speakers.